Now, if we're being honest, the Cowboys have tried to make improvements this offseason. The front office didn't go on a massive spending spree, but they did make subtle moves that suggest they at least recognize this issue. Drafting Tyler Guyton in round 1 wasn't just about replacing Tyron Smith, it was a message. A message that the offensive line, especially at the tackle position, needs to be a strength again. That's a big part of fixing the run game. They also brought in some new bodies at running back. Is there a clear-cut star in the room?
No.
But this isn't 2016 anymore. This isn't about handing the ball off 25 times to a bell cow and watching him bulldoze defenses. The modern NFL ground game is about efficiency, creativity, and most importantly, scheme. And I think that's where Clayton Adams and Mike McCarthy are banking their chips this year. They believe that if the offensive line plays up to its pedigree and if the coaching staff can stop being so one-dimensional in how they call the run game, then you don't need a superstar in the backfield. You just need competent bodies and a plan that makes sense. The problem is, we've heard that before. Let's not forget, we've done this dance with Kellen Moore. We've done it with Jason Garrett. And now we're doing it with Brian Schottenheimer. Everyone says they want balance. Everyone says they want to be physical and run the ball. But when push comes to shove, the Cowboys get away from it the moment things get tough. That's what has to change. It's not just about running the football, it's about running it with a purpose. With an identity. Far too often in recent years, the Cowboys' run game has felt like filler. Just something to do on first down before they get back to throwing it to CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Cooks. That kind of run game doesn't scare anyone. That's why defenses keep daring them to do it. You want teams to respect the run game. Not just expect it, but fear it. The kind of fear that makes a linebacker hesitate just a split second on play action. That's what gives you the edge in big games. That's what's been missing in Dallas. And the numbers back that up. Let's look at it another way. If you strip away the opponent names and just look at run efficiency in neutral situations, meaning early downs, close games, Dallas hasn't been even average. They've been below the league median more often than not. And that's the stat that matters. Because that's when your run game really counts. Anyone can rip off a 10-yard run on 2nd and 15 when the defense is playing off. What matters is can you get 4, 5, 6 yards on 1st and 10 when it's a one-score game in the third quarter. That's when you wear teams down. That's when you start to control the game script. And here's where I give credit. Drafting Guyton, bringing in Booker, changing line coaches, that tells me the Cowboys are serious about fixing this. They're at least acknowledging the reality, which is more than what some teams do. The next step. Execution. Can they put these new schemes in place and actually stick to them in real games, especially when the pressure is on? Can they avoid reverting to that frustrating run-pass cycle that stalls drives and kills momentum? That's the million-dollar question. And here's another key point. The type of runs the Cowboys call matters. That's what made Arizona's approach under Adams interesting. They didn't just pick one thing and stick with it until it failed. They were dynamic. They adjusted to what defenses gave them. That's what Dallas has lacked. It always felt like when the run wasn't working, they didn't have a plan B. It was just run it harder or abandon it entirely. There was no in-between. That needs to change. And maybe the most important thing, stop running just to stay balanced. Balance doesn't mean 50-50 run-pass. Balance means having the threat to do either at any time. It means being unpredictable. And that only happens when your run game is actually effective. Because right now, the Cowboys don't need a top-5 run game. But they desperately need a respectable one. One that keeps defenses honest. One that makes life easier for Dak Prescott. One that gives you a shot to win in January when the weather's bad, the defenses are better, and the margin for error is razor-thin. Let me put it like this. The Cowboys don't need to become the 1990s again. They don't need Emmitt Smith reincarnated. But they do need to find a way to stop being so one-dimensional. Because as long as defenses feel zero fear of the Cowboys' run game, they're going to tee off on Dak and dare you to beat them doing the thing you're worst at. That's not a winning formula. We've seen it play out year after year. So yes, there's optimism. There's new blood on the coaching staff. There are investments being made in the trenches. And there are reasons to think it might be better. But hope isn't a strategy. Improvement has to actually show up on Sundays. So once again, I'll ask you guys, what's your confidence level that the Cowboys will finally fix the run game this year? Scale it from 1 to 10 in the comments. And while you're down there, let me know what you think is more important, the talent in the backfield or the scheme and blocking up front. Let's keep the conversation rolling, because this, more than just about anything else, might decide how far the Cowboys go in 2025. And if you're still with me, don't forget to like the video, share it with a fellow Cowboys fan, and subscribe if you haven't already. Daily Cowboys content coming your way all season long. Let's ride. Let's take this conversation a step further. Because it's not just about fixing what went wrong last year, it's about building something sustainable. Something that holds up not just in Week 3 against the Commanders, but in January when you're playing on the road in Detroit, in 20-degree weather, against a top-5 defense. That's what this is really about. You want to win in the playoffs? You have to run the football. Period. We can keep spinning the stat sheet, breaking down yards per carry, box looks, and line splits, but at some point, this becomes about identity. What kind of team do the Cowboys want to be? Right now, they've been a team that wants to win with Dak's arm and CD's route running. And that's fine. They've got the talent to do that. But that can't be the only way they win. Because when that's all you've got, and you're facing a defense that knows how to take that away, you better have something else to lean on. And too often, Dallas hasn't. Look back at the last few playoff exits. The Niners' loss. The Packers' loss. It wasn't just about turnovers or bad defense. It was about the Cowboys being one-dimensional when it mattered most. And defenses could smell it. There's a reason San Francisco seems to be built to thrive in the postseason. It's not because Brock Purdy is some elite QB, it's because Kyle Shanahan can beat you in so many different ways. That starts with the run game. That's what Dallas is chasing. Now, let's talk about the guys in the backfield for a moment. Because even though I've said this isn't all about having an elite RB, we do have to acknowledge, right now, the Cowboys don't have a true bell cow. They're going by committee. That means every single element around them, the blocking, the design, the timing, has to be sharp. You don't have a guy who can bail you out with sheer talent. At least, not yet. Now maybe someone emerges. Maybe Rico Dowdle becomes more than just a spot starter. Maybe rookie Deuce Vaughn finds his groove. Maybe a veteran surprise signing helps stabilize the room. But for now, that group looks more like a puzzle than a plan. It can work, but only if the pieces fit perfectly. That's why all the pressure falls on the offensive line and the scheme. The Cowboys have poured draft capital into that O-line. Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, Tyren when healthy, and now Guyton, this group should be a strength. But it hasn't played to that level consistently in recent years. Injuries, shuffling, and yes, coaching turnover have taken their toll. If Clayton Adams brings over the diverse run game we saw in Arizona, where they didn't just live in one lane, but mixed in outside zone, counter, trap, even designed misdirection, that's a big win. Especially for a team that's been way too predictable at times. You can't keep running inside zone on 1st and 10 like it's a religion. Mix it up. Keep defenses guessing. That's how you create lanes for even average backs to succeed. And again, I want to hammer this point. Running the football doesn't mean becoming old school, ground and pound, smash-mouth football. That's not what I'm saying. It's about situational dominance. It's about converting 3rd and 2 when everyone knows you're running. It's about keeping defenses honest in the red zone. It's about being able to close out games when you've got a fourth-quarter lead and the other team is out of timeouts. Because how many times have we seen Dallas get in those moments and fail? The inability to run the ball when it matters most has haunted this team. It's cost them playoff games. It's forced Dak to try to do too much. It's made their offense easier to scheme against. And it's got to stop. And while we're at it, don't underestimate how much this impacts Dak Prescott himself. Because when you can't run the ball, defenses pin their ears back. They send pressure. They drop 7 in coverage and take away the middle of the field. Suddenly, Dak has to be perfect. And as much as I support Dak, no quarterback should be asked to be perfect every single snap. That's not how championship teams are built. You want to see the best version of Dak? Give him a ground game that picks up 4 or 5 yards on early downs. Let him operate out of play action more. Give him 2nd and 5 instead of 2nd and 10. That changes everything. So again, it all connects. Offensive line, scheme, backfield, quarterback. It's a chain, and when one link breaks, the whole thing falls apart. That's what we saw far too often last season. Now, what about the coaching? That's the X factor. If you believe in this staff, then you should feel some level of optimism. Schottenheimer and Adams are saying the right things. They understand the problem. They've seen what works. But the NFL is full of smart guys who never get results. The question is, will they follow through? Because the Cowboys don't need more slogans. They need answers. Run the damn ball only means something if the ball actually moves forward. So I'll ask again, do you believe this Cowboys coaching staff has what it takes to reinvent the run game? Drop a yes or no in the comments. Or give me a number 1 to 10. How much faith do you have that this group gets it right? And if you're somewhere in the middle, I get it. Hope and skepticism can live in the same space. That's kind of what it's like being a Cowboys fan these days. But I'll say this, if the Cowboys get the run game right, everything else opens up. The passing game becomes more dangerous. The time of possession battle swings in your favor. The defense stays fresh. The red zone efficiency improves. The fourth quarters start going your way instead of the other teams. That's the opportunity in front of them. And if they waste it again, then we'll be sitting here in January, having the same conversation we've had for 28 years. All right, Cowboys Nation, that's it for now. But we're not done with this topic. I'll be keeping a close eye on training camp updates, preseason performance, and every little clue we get about this team's identity in 2025. If you're not already subscribed, now's the time. Hit that button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. And if you want to support the channel and help keep these deep dives going, all I ask? Share this video with a fellow fan. Let's keep the pressure on. Let's keep the conversation going. We'll talk soon. Let's continue peeling back this onion, because the truth is, fixing the Cowboys' run game isn't just about the X's and O's. It's about philosophy, mentality. Are you willing to commit to something, even when it doesn't work the first few times? Because that's been a core issue in Dallas for years now. The moment the run game gets stuffed early, they go into panic mode. They abandon it. They put it all on Dak's shoulders and hope he bails them out. And to be fair, sometimes he does. But sometimes he doesn't, and when he doesn't, it's usually because the offense never had a plan B. That's the thing about the run game. It's not always explosive. Sometimes, it's ugly. Sometimes it's 3 yards, then 4 yards, then 1 yard, then boom, 14. But you've got to be willing to stick with it. And more importantly, you've got to believe in it. Right now, I'm not sure the Cowboys truly believe in their ground game. Not the way San Francisco does. Not the way Detroit or Baltimore or even Philly does. And until that changes, I'm not sure the results will either. Let's rewind to something Brian Schottenheimer said this offseason: when teams know you're going to run the football, you still have to be able to do it. That sounds great. But can you actually line up, impose your will, and move the line of scrimmage? That's not a coaching quote, that's a culture question. This is where the offensive line becomes not just a technical piece, but an emotional tone setter. You want to run the football? Then your linemen have to be the heartbeat of the team. They have to want it. They have to punish defenses. They have to make teams regret putting 5 guys in the box. And that's why I'm still cautiously optimistic about this group. Because with Tyler Smith emerging, Guyton in the mix, and Zach Martin still playing at a high level, the potential is there. But potential only gets you so far. It's going to come down to consistency, drive after drive, week after week. And that's something the Cowboys haven't had in the trenches lately. Let's not forget either, the Cowboys' best years offensively have always involved a top-tier offensive line and a respectable run game. You don't have to go back to the 90s. Just look at 2014 with DeMarco Murray, or 2016 with rookie Zeke behind that dominant line. Those offenses were efficient, explosive, and reliable because they didn't rely on one element to carry them. And right now, that's exactly what the Cowboys are missing: reliability. Let's talk about how this affects game planning too. Because if you have a run game that works, your entire playbook opens up. Play action becomes a threat. The defense has to stay honest. Linebackers hesitate. Safeties creep down. Suddenly, CeeDee Lamb has more room to operate. Brandon Cooks has more space to run deep crossers. Even tight ends start getting more favorable matchups. The ripple effect is massive. But it only happens if you can run the ball when it matters. And I know we've hammered this home already, but look at the data again. Look at how Dallas performs when facing light boxes. They're not even average. That's not just a red flag, that's a neon sign blinking, this isn't working. Defenses are begging Dallas to run the football. And they still can't make them pay. That has to change. Otherwise, this offense will continue to stall out when it matters most. Now let's shift gears to something we haven't talked much about yet: tempo. One of the easiest ways to keep a defense guessing, especially when you're trying to run the ball, is to control the pace of the game. Go hurry up. Use tempo to wear down the front seven. Don't give defenses a chance to sub in fresh bodies or change packages. Make them defend your game. Mike McCarthy has dabbled in tempo over the years, but it's never been a true part of the Cowboys' identity. Maybe this is the year that changes. Because when you combine a steady run game with controlled tempo, that's when defenses crack. That's when you start seeing 7-minute touchdown drives that demoralize opponents. And I'll say it again, this doesn't require an MVP at running back. This is about process. It's about rhythm. It's about forcing the defense to respond instead of letting them dictate terms. You do that, and suddenly you're not just running the ball, you're controlling the game. Now, some of you might still say, this is a passing league. Just air it out. And look, I get it. Passing is more efficient in general. But the most dangerous teams are the ones who can throw when they want to throw, not when they're forced to. That's the difference between being explosive and being desperate. Let's bring this full circle. Fixing the Cowboys' run game doesn't mean turning back the clock or pounding it 40 times a game. It means balance. Not just in terms of play calling, but in philosophy. It means being able to choose how you attack. Right now, Dallas doesn't have that luxury. And until they do, they'll keep coming up short when it counts. So here's what I want to know from you: if you had to fix one thing first, would it be A. Improve the blocking schemes? B. Find a true RB1? C. Commit to the run game mentally and philosophically? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how you're thinking. Because this conversation isn't just about the Cowboys. It's about understanding how modern offenses really work. And the Cowboys right now are a cautionary tale. They've got the quarterback. They've got the wide receivers. They've even got a promising O-line. But until the run game becomes a threat, they'll keep coming up short against elite competition. Alright, if you're still here, thank you for sticking with me on this deep dive. I know we've covered a lot, but this topic matters. It could be the difference between a one-and-done playoff exit or a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl. So, if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button. Share it with a fellow Cowboys fan who's been yelling at the TV every Sunday about the exact same issues. And if you haven't already, subscribe. We're bringing you Cowboys content every day of the week. Training camp updates are coming, roster battles are heating up, and we'll be keeping an especially close eye on how this run game starts to evolve. Because this right here, this could define the Cowboys season. Look, let's keep it real. Part of the frustration with the Cowboys' run game isn't just the production. It's the philosophy. Fans aren't just upset because Tony Pollard didn't rip off explosive runs last season. They're frustrated because the run game has lacked identity. It's looked passive, predictable, conservative in the worst possible way. Too often, it feels like the Cowboys run the ball just to check a box, not because they believe it's going to work. You know the feeling: 2nd and 10. Here comes an inside zone for 2 yards. Drive over. That's not physical. That's not intimidating. That's going through the motions. And frankly, fans are tired of it. If you watched the 49ers or the Ravens last season, or even the Lions under Ben Johnson, you saw something totally different. You saw run games that punched defenses in the mouth and dictated terms. Those teams didn't just run because it was the right time. They ran because they knew they could move you, because it was part of who they were. Dallas has not been that team. But here's the thing, the Cowboys have the talent to do it. Even without a Pro Bowl running back, even without a fullback, even without some flashy system, they have the raw materials. Tyler Smith is a mauler. Zach Martin is still one of the most technically sound guards in football. Terrence Steele, when healthy, can move bodies. And Tyler Guyton has all the tools to develop into a top-tier right tackle. The foundation is there, it just has to be unleashed. It has to be coached the right way. The Cowboys need to stop overthinking it. They don't need to reinvent football. They just need to play to their strengths, especially up front. And let's talk about the backs for a second. Because while the room doesn't have an alpha dog like Zeke in his prime or a Christian McCaffrey type, that doesn't mean it's doomed. In fact, a committee approach can work, if you actually commit to it and use each back the right way. Ezekiel Elliott, at this stage of his career, isn't going to lead the league in rushing. We know that. But he can still be a tough, short-yardage, pass-pro guy. He's the vet, the guy who brings leadership and experience. That matters. Rico Dowdle, meanwhile, has shown flashes. He's quick, he's physical, and he runs with a chip on his shoulder. Deuce Vaughn. Gadget potential. And don't sleep on Royce Freeman. He's a downhill runner who fits what McCarthy says he wants. North-south, efficient, tough yards. So, while the names might not jump off the page, the versatility is there. The real challenge is putting them in position to succeed. That means scripting better early down runs. That means actually using motion and misdirection to open running lanes. That means being smarter, not just tougher. And here's the irony. Everyone keeps saying the Cowboys' offense needs to take pressure off Dak Prescott. But how do you actually do that? You give him a run game that keeps him ahead of the sticks. A run game that makes 2 ND and 6 the norm instead of 2 ND and 11. That's the difference between taking a shot downfield and checking it down on 3rd and long. That's why the run game matters. Not just for its own sake, but because it's the engine that makes everything else work. You want more deep balls to CeeDee Lamb? Better have a ground game that freezes those safeties. You want cleaner pockets for Dak? Better make sure defensive lines are thinking about run fits instead of pinning their ears back. This is what separates good offenses from great ones. Balance isn't about a perfect 50-50 split. It's about being dangerous in every situation. It's about keeping the defense guessing. And that all starts with making your run game credible again. And you know what? That's also on Mike McCarthy. Let's be honest, he's talked a lot about running the damn ball since taking over play-calling duties. He said he wanted to be more physical, more balanced. He said he wanted to protect Dak with a run-first mindset. Well, now it's time to deliver. Because so far, the results have been mixed. At best, this is his chance. New offensive line coach. New bodies in the backfield. A fresh slate with a healthy offensive line. If he can't produce a functional, respectable run game now, maybe it's just not in his DNA. That's what this season will tell us. And I'm not saying the Cowboys need to be the 2022 Eagles or the 2019 Titans. They don't need to lead the league in rushing yards. They just need to be effective when it matters. They need to be able to convert 3 RD and 2 without dialing up a risky pass. They need to take the air out of the ball late in games. That's how you finish teams. That's how you win in December and January. And listen, we all know what happens when the Cowboys can't run the ball in those moments. It puts everything on Dak's shoulders. And when that happens, defenses tee off. The pass rush ramps up. The turnovers pile up. The offense becomes one-dimensional. And once that happens, the season's basically over. It happened against the Niners. It happened against the Packers. We've seen this movie before. So now the question becomes, are the Cowboys finally ready to flip the script? Can Clayton Adams bring some of that toughness, that unpredictability, that creativity from Arizona to this offense? Can this offensive line, when healthy, play like a top-5 unit again? Can this running back group, by committee, be more than the sum of its parts? It's all on the table. It's all possible. But until they prove it, the doubt is fair. And let me say one last thing. Fans don't care how it gets done. They don't care if it's a sixth-round rookie or a veteran back getting the carries. They don't care if it's zone scheme, gap scheme, or some wild hybrid. What they care about is results. Run the ball. Set the tone. Control the game. And maybe, just maybe, break the cycle of postseason heartbreak. Because if the Cowboys do figure out their run game, if it clicks, if the offensive line stays healthy, if the backs get into rhythm, this team becomes very dangerous. And suddenly, all that talk about this being the year might actually mean something. Look, I think a lot of Cowboys fans are torn right now. On one hand, you want to believe that this team sees the flaws, that they've acknowledged the limitations of the past few years, and that the moves they've made, whether it's drafting Tyler Guyton, hiring a new offensive line coach, or shaking up the running back room, are all part of a master plan to finally get this ground game back on track. But on the other hand, haven't we been here before? Every off-season there's talk about balance. Every training camp we hear the same buzzwords: physicality, downhill running, controlling the clock. It all sounds great in July. But what happens when the games count? What happens when it's 3rd and 2, late in the fourth quarter, and you need to put the game away on the ground? Does this team have the grit, and more importantly, the execution, to run behind their big men and move the chains? Or are they going to outthink themselves again, line up in shotgun, and throw some bubble screen that loses a yard? That's the stuff that separates real contenders from pretenders. Not the highlight plays. Not the 40-yard bombs. It's the dirty, grind-it-out downs where your will has to be stronger than the defense's. That's where the Cowboys have consistently fallen short. Let's talk more about the offensive line for a second, because that's the foundation of everything we're discussing. The Cowboys have talent there, no question. Tyler Smith is a rising star. Zach Martin is still an elite technician. And Guyton has the athletic upside to become something special. But chemistry matters. Cohesion matters. And when you look at how many combinations they had to roll out last year due to injuries and inconsistency, it's no wonder the run game never found rhythm. This unit has to gel fast. Because without a dominant line, I don't care who you've got in the backfield, you're not winning the battle up front. And speaking of the backfield, let's zoom in there for a second. Right now, the Cowboys are going with a committee approach. You've got Rico Dowdle, you've got Deuce Vaughn, Royce Freeman, Malik Davis, maybe even Ezekiel Elliott again, depending on how the coaches feel about leadership and short yardage reliability. But none of those guys are Christian McCaffrey. None of them are Derrick Henry. They're role players. Complementary pieces. That's not a bad thing, necessarily, but it does mean your run game better be schematically sound. Because if you don't have elite talent back there, you've got to make up for it with execution, timing, and play design. That's where Clayton Adams becomes crucial. His background in college and the NFL has shown that he values movement, misdirection, and getting blockers in space. That's something the Cowboys haven't really leaned into in the past. Under previous staffs, it often felt like they were trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole, running concepts that didn't match the personnel or didn't adapt when things weren't working. This new setup needs to be different. Not just by default, but by design. I also want to stress the psychological part of the run game. Because this isn't just about physical dominance, it's about mental pressure. When a team can run the ball effectively, it wears down the opposing defense. It frustrates them. It changes their body language. You start to see linebackers guessing, safeties creeping up, edge rushers getting tired. It opens up the entire playbook. That's what's been missing in Dallas. The ability to dictate terms. They've had plenty of games where they moved the ball well, but not many where they controlled the game. Where they imposed their identity. That's what needs to change. And let me give you another perspective. Think about the playoffs. Think about the cold weather games. Think about playing on the road in January against a team like San Francisco or Philadelphia. You think you're going to throw it 45 times in those conditions and come out with a win? Not likely. At some point, you've got to punch someone in the mouth. You've got to line up, snap the ball, and say, "We're coming right at you." That's what wins in December and January. It's why the run game, while maybe less sexy than the passing game, is just as important to long-term success. I'm not saying this team needs to rush for 150 yards per game. That's not realistic. But what they do need is a run game that can convert in key spots. A run game that doesn't leave them in 2nd and 12 every other series. A run game that forces defenses to respect the threat, so play action can actually be effective. Because let's be honest, Dak Prescott is at his best when there's balance. When the defense has to think twice before dropping 7 into coverage. When they have to play honest. That's when you get the best version of number 4. Now, none of this will happen overnight. There will be growing pains. There will be weeks where it looks like the same old problems are back. But the real test isn't whether the Cowboys run for 200 yards in week 2. The test is whether they stick with it. Whether they keep evolving the scheme, keep trusting the line, keep giving backs a chance to find rhythm. Because the worst thing they could do is panic. Abandon the plan. Go back to chucking it 45 times a game and putting everything on Dak's shoulders. We've seen that movie. And we know how it ends. The Cowboys need to play smarter, not just harder. They need to be strategic. Mix up formations. Use pre-snap motion. Get creative in the red zone. Run to set up the pass, and then hit with precision. That's how good teams operate. That's how you win when it matters most. And I'll close this part with one more challenge. If the Cowboys want to be taken seriously this year, they need to prove they can win in multiple ways. Not just with C.D. Lamb running wild or Micah Parsons wrecking games. But by being physical. Being consistent. Being able to line up on 3rd and short and say, "We've got this." If they can do that, the ceiling for this team rises dramatically. If not, well, we know what comes next. So once again, I'm turning it over to you guys. What kind of run game do you think wins in today's NFL? Do you think the Cowboys are headed in the right direction with the current setup? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more honest, passionate Cowboys breakdowns every single week. And yet, even as the dust began to settle after the sentencing, one reality was still inescapable. The stain on Rashee Rice's name doesn't vanish overnight. You don't just walk out of a courtroom with probation and expect the world to forget what happened. This wasn't just a speeding ticket. This wasn't some minor off-season headline. This was a crash, a near tragedy, that could have ended lives. It was national news. And it'll follow Rice for years. But here's where things get complicated, again. Because while Rashee Rice might have escaped jail time, the true punishment may still lie ahead, in the court of public opinion and in the offices of NFL decision-makers. What will the league do? What will Roger Goodell do? And how do the Kansas City Chiefs, a team obsessed with culture and repeat success, move forward with a young wide receiver who has now twice, not once, but twice, found himself at the center of legal controversy in just a matter of months? Let's be clear, this wasn't the only incident. There was also the alleged assault at a Dallas nightclub weeks later. That situation is still under investigation. And while it may or may not result in formal charges, the optics are undeniable. 2 separate incidents, both during an off-season where Rice was supposed to be maturing into a reliable WR2 behind Hollywood Brown. Instead of rising as the Chiefs' next breakout star, he's now become a storyline Brett Veach and Andy Reid have to answer for. And as fans, it's frustrating. Rashee Rice showed flashes of greatness last season. He became Mahomes' most trusted receiver not named Travis Kelce. He led the team's wideouts in yards. He was electric after the catch. He fought for extra yardage. He bailed out the offense when it sputtered. You couldn't watch a Chiefs game down the stretch without seeing number 4 make a critical 3rd down grab or turn a screen into a 20-yard gain. That version of Rice, the disciplined route runner, the effort player, the rising star, feels at odds with the version we've seen this offseason. And it's not just fans who are wrestling with that. The Chiefs' front office, the locker room, even Mahomes himself, they all have to reconcile those 2 versions. Can they trust him to keep his head down and bounce back? Or is this a sign of deeper issues, immaturity, or even entitlement? Because the NFL has seen this movie before. A talented young wide receiver gets in trouble early in his career. The team stands by him until they don't. One more mistake, one more phone call at 2 a.m., and that second chance turns into a career spiraling out of control. That's not just hypotheticals, that's history. Josh Gordon. Antonio Brown. Even guys like Martavis Bryant or Justin Blackmon. Talent gets you chances. But repeated chaos? That eventually gets you cut. Now, we're not saying Rice is headed there. Not yet. But the warning signs are blinking red. And if you think the league isn't taking notes, think again. We've seen suspensions handed out for far less. The NFL personal conduct policy gives the commissioner broad authority, and he's used it time and time again to make a statement. Whether the legal outcome is jail time or not, the league often hands down its own form of justice. Just ask Alvin Kamara or Kareem Hunt. So what does this mean for Kansas City heading into the 2025 season? Well, let's start with the basics. Rashee Rice is likely going to be suspended. The question is, how long? 4 games? 6 games? More? That alone forces Andy Reid and Matt Nagy to adjust their offensive planning early in the season. Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy may have to shoulder a heavier load. Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and rookie Javon Baker could see more snaps. And Mahomes, well, he's going to have to elevate whoever is out there. Again. But the bigger issue isn't just game planning, it's trust. Trust in the locker room. Trust in the huddle. Trust on the sideline. That's what leadership is built on. And for Rashee Rice to earn that back, it's not just about catching passes. It's about showing up, owning his mistakes, putting in the work, saying the right things, and more importantly, doing the right things every day. Because one more misstep, and the conversation shifts from, can he return, to, should he be on this team at all? You see, the Kansas City Chiefs aren't just any franchise. They're the gold standard right now. Back-to-back Super Bowl champions. A dynasty in motion. And dynasties don't allow themselves to be dragged down by distractions. That's the hard truth. Brett Veach has shown over and over again, he's willing to cut bait with guys who don't align with the culture. Whether it's veterans or rookies, if you jeopardize the mission, you're out. And that's what Rice needs to understand. This is bigger than just his career. This is about legacy. This is about how your name is remembered, not just by fans, but by teammates, coaches, media, and the next generation of players coming up behind you. The question now is simple. Does Rashee Rice get it? Or was this just a press conference moment, a scripted apology, and a plan to lay low until week 1? Because if he really gets it, we'll see it. We'll see it in how he trains, how he handles the media, how he behaves off the field. We'll see it in the effort he puts in during the suspension, not after it. We'll see it in how he mentors younger players, how he talks to reporters, how he interacts with fans. That's what growth looks like. And Chiefs Kingdom will be watching closely. Not because they're rooting for him to fail, but because they know what's at stake. The Chiefs are trying to do something no team has ever done. Win 3 straight Super Bowls. There is zero margin for error. Every snap, every roster spot, every decision, it all matters. And in a league this competitive, the smallest distractions can become the biggest derailments. Rashee Rice could be part of history. Or he could become a footnote. The choice, it's his.